What's your story? Whether you're a client or an independent financial advisor, we know you face many important decisions that can affect your and your clients' long-term financial success. Welcome to the WIN Podcast, What's Important Now with Corey Heimensen, accredited investment fiduciary and president of Heimensen Wealth Advisors. In this podcast, Corey helps you identify your goals and objectives through financial education and comprehensive planning, while inspiring you to make better behavioral decisions in your personal finance. With a twist on pop culture and current events, join us as we explore growth and protection strategies for individuals, advisors, and their businesses. Come and discover what's important to you now.
Hello and welcome to the WIN Podcast with Corey Heimensen. Corey, how are you today?
Great. How about you?
I am doing fantastic. I would like to ask a favor, though. This is the WIN Podcast. I know WIN is an acronym. I know what it stands for. Remind the audience what WIN stands for.
What's important now? Quite simply, we can't plan for the future if we don't determine and tackle what's important today and tomorrow and the day after that.
Yep, agree 100%. I think that, and I'm not speaking for the entire audience, I'm speaking for myself only here. However, I know that in the times that my family has struggled financially, or we were just getting our footing, building that foundation, there were things that bothered me right now, right? I mean, it was, oh my gosh, I have to make sure that I'm doing the right thing with my taxes. I've got to figure this out. I've got to call somebody and talk to somebody about this, or I've got to make sure that I'm on the right track for whatever. And that causes some sleepless nights, and that causes some stress in the relationship a lot of times, between a husband and wife or a couple that is dealing with finances. There are things that are important right now. And then there are things that are, well, we can kick that down the road a little bit until we figure out and solve for now. So I love that. I love your acronym. I love the title of the podcast and what that means. I know today we're going to be covering something very, very specific. The first two podcasts, if you're just joining us, the first podcast was Corey's inaugural podcast, which really tells you about him, his business, his history, and him personally. So go listen to that. The second podcast was talking about what it looks like to call in. What happens if you call into the office? We want to break down some of those barriers people have to calling in and discussing their concerns, because it's no pressure, right? It's just, hey, let's have a conversation. What's important now to you? And let's see if we can help you out with that. And so today we're going what that next step would be. We ended the last podcast with, you've had that last meeting, and now we've made a decision to move forward and work together. And that's what this podcast is all about. What does it look like to work with you and your team? So let me ask a question. I've committed. I've said, hey, I think it's a great fit. You've said the same thing. We're moving forward. What happens next?
It's a great question. Happy to tackle that. And maybe the easiest way to start this is to think about a duck swimming on a pond.
Okay. That is not where I thought you were going to take this, but I'm with the duck. Let's go.
If you're the client and you see this duck gliding effortlessly across the water, that's what we want the experience to feel like for the client. But if you could see under the water, the stuff that we're doing behind the scenes, just like the duck, we're paddling like hell to make for a smooth ride. And so it's a great combination, because we take things off your plate as a client so that you don't have to worry about things, and you can go, hopefully, effortlessly. And yet there's going to be bumps in the road some days, or turbulence, or waves, whatever you want to throw in there. But it's a team event, and we try to do the heavy lifting.
I'm telling you that is such a great analogy, because growing up where I grew up in Washington State around water all the time, and you see ducks, you see geese, you see all these seagulls, for instance, they'll be on the water. It doesn't matter what the waves are doing. They're just riding the waves up and down. They still look fairly graceful, but I'm sure there's lots going on behind the scene to make sure that they're not going under, they're not feeling like they have to take off or panic, those kind of things. And I think that we all feel that way in our own lives with certain things if we don't have somebody there helping us to, hey, the calm is coming, or you can do this, right? I mean, that affirmation, or that coach or cheerleader behind us saying, hey, we got this. I love that analogy. That's fantastic.
Exactly. Success comes from a lot of steps and a lot of team members, but we want the client to ultimately get the reward.
All right. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how it can be nice, smooth gliding along. We've brought all our information in. You've disseminated it. That's part of that last podcast. You're really helping us to build a plan and build a future. We also spoke about that everybody's situation is individualized, right? So can you give me some examples? Give me some, whether it's stories or just examples of what you're seeing of how whether it's a couple or a single person comes in and gives you all this information and how you help them construct the future.
A lot of people, and maybe this is Main Street media that really push this, that a lot of the commercials or advertisements you see are really geared toward retirement. The perfect picture of a couple, and they're walking on the beach, and they've done everything right for the last 40 years. Not going to lie, even with assistance from somebody like me, there's bumps in the road, there's issues, and it's not always going to be a perfect ride. And so that's where the problem with setting 20 or 40-year goals from now is so far away that we can strive to achieve that, but we need to tackle those important things today that come up, or those surprises. And so from my side, like you mentioned, we gather the information, we put together a concept plan, we start doing a lot of our daily things behind the scenes, and I'll bullet point some of those concepts here shortly, but we have to be ready to navigate, we'll call them storms or things that come up. And so my job, or my
pandemics.
Sure. Oh, right? For sure. I mean, nobody really saw that coming, or maybe we thought it was
exactly
somewhat of a joke. Yeah, you hate to say at first, ended up being a big deal, and maybe still is. Maybe will be even more. I don't know. But at the end of the day, we've had horrible events in our country throughout history, and we recover because we're a resilient nation. But boy, there you go. I'm getting off the rails 3 minutes into the conversation. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. And I'm going to backtrack just for a moment. Corey, how long have you been in the business?
I started in 1999.
Okay. So for those that are keeping track, those keeping score at home, 1999, that was a pretty decent year. And then the 2000s hit, the early 2001, 2002, the tech bubble. And then you were also an advisor through 08 and 09. And those of us that are old enough to remember that, which I am, that was a horrible time. That was a tough time financially and in the housing market and everything else that was going on. And then you've got COVID. These are the things that have cropped up, and you've worked through that entire time. You've seen it, right? I think there's a company out there that says we know it because we've seen it, or something like that. I'm not going to quote the company, but you've lived through those things. You've helped clients get through those things. So what you're saying absolutely resonates with me.
It's really amazing to me because it feels like I started this career yesterday, and I love it, and I'm passionate every day showing up to work. And then suddenly, once in a while, I will reflect. It's over 2 decades at this point. The things that I've seen, the things I've experienced, you just mentioned several of them. And here's what really strikes me as interesting is if we look at the history of the entire stock market, which is about 140 plus years, markets go up about 70% of the time through thick and thin and everything. And if you look at my career and we list those, we'll call them iceberg moments, Y2K, internet bubble, 9/11, bank crisis, housing crisis, COVID. I mean, we can go on. There's more. In my career, the average number of up years versus down is about 70%. And so it totally matches 140 years. So why would I, or why should a client get all worked up if we do have a negative year next year? Now, I'm not predicting that. We're going to have them. There's going to be years where this stuff just doesn't go up. That's markets in general. But at the end of the day, I'm a cheerleader because markets are efficient and well-valued companies will go up in value.
All right, so let's get back down into the nitty-gritty of this. When you're working with a client and they're new, we like I said, we've signed up, we've got that plan in place. What happens after that?
To really dig into the process and understand it, I think you got to look under the hood, and I'm going to give you some real simple, straightforward little things that we're doing behind the scenes, which then translates into what the client-facing experience looks like on the backside of that, or in an ongoing fashion. We've established what we're trying to accomplish from a high-level view for these clients. And so my role then becomes to manage the investment strategy, take care of asset allocation. We're going to rebalance things when we can take advantage of opportunistic situations in the market. We're going to screen the investment managers that we team up with. We're going to screen all the research we pay for. We're doing due diligence. We're giving clients online access. And that doesn't even get into the service levels of my staff and I, of answering that phone call or that email each day. We want to solve as many things as we can immediately if there's a client question or a concern. We go further. Clients have access to our weekly electronic newsletters of information and updates. They get full access to our website and our financial tools. We're constantly providing or have the ability to basically daily provide performance reporting. Now, I'm not telling clients to run out, look at their account daily or 44 times a day. I mean, that it's possible, but it's going to drive you nuts. You don't want to do it. But now here's the one thing that I think that really separates us from a lot of people in the industry. And that is on a daily basis, we are scoring every investment asset that a client has with our firm. And what I mean by that is we are scoring it from a volatility standpoint to determine if it's appropriate for what we are trying to accomplish for that client. And so if something gets out of whack, we will see it today or next Thursday or whatever day that is. Because I know for a fact, this is an industry where there are, let's say, pretenders sitting in seats like mine. They might be good salespeople, but at the end of the day, they are not watching the account after they've landed it because they're looking for new accounts to manage. We, at our firm, believe in creating relationships and then maintaining the heck out of them because we like the relationship with our clients. We don't want to see them go somewhere else. We want to deliver value and keep them on the bus. And so adding these little bits of technology allow us to do a better job. And when we can track things from a future potential problem standpoint, that makes us more nimble to make changes and to navigate those storms or those market events like we've already discussed and come out better on the other side.
Let me ask you this. I want to go back to something you said. You spoke about that they have online access, they have tools and resources, and I know that they have there's software that they are able to access. How do they get trained on that? Because that would be one thing that, don't get me wrong, I love my parents. They're brilliant in a lot of ways. However, technology-wise, I'm constantly, having to help them program a remote or figure out how to get the certain thing on the TV. So how do you help your clients navigate all the tools and resources that you have available?
It can be a complicated process, but luckily we have someone, and I'm going to single her out today. Nicole on my team is our resident online access expert for client questions, setup of this, and that even continues electronic delivery of documents because, let's face it, in this industry and in this world, there is more and more regulation all the time, which is fine and dandy. I don't have a problem with that. But what the regulators think is that providing more and more paper documentation of things to clients is how you educate them and inform them. And I'll tell you what happens. People get so much stuff that eventually they don't open any of it. I have clients come. Yes. I have new clients come in here after a year,
That's
and
right.
They have a stack of envelopes they've never even opened, and they say, "Do we need this?" And I'll say, "You do not, because everything you get as a client, we get here too." So we're looking at everything they're looking at.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we're looking at more than they're looking at because they're not opening the envelopes. Nicole is our person, and so once somebody opens an account, she will talk them through it either in person or over the phone or online virtually, step by step of how they create their secure login. And regardless of how many accounts they have, they can see all of it in one picture inside of one secure login, and that's accessed through our website.
Well, I think that's fantastic, and shout out to Nicole for sure for doing that. I love the fact that one of the few positives that the pandemic or COVID brought to us was more virtual meetings. And with the ability of some of these companies, I'm not going to single a ton out, but Zoom or GoToMeeting or any of these, you can record the screen. And so I love the fact that you probably have that option for your clients when Nicole's working with them and showing them how to navigate the site and log in and create these different things. That can be recorded. They can have that in perpetuity so they can go back and, oh, geez, I forgot how to do this. Let me watch that video again that we made. There's so many ways to educate clients and help them to navigate all the tools that you're giving them. Tell me a little bit more about some of the resources you have.
First of all, I will say you are right. 2 years ago, I would have laughed if you'd have said you and I, as a client advisor relationship or somebody else would meet on a computer, see each other in the face and maybe circle their kids and their family in. And now we do it all the time. And it doesn't matter the age of the client or the tech savviness of the client. They're learning that this saves time and it's efficient, that they don't have to travel to my office. And like you say, it's a great way to document. We can share my screen to them. We can do so many things. And technology has made my life and our firm's so much greater just since I began this, over 20 years ago, that it's amazing to me. But part of that is why people invest, because our world constantly improves itself. But that's a whole nother episode probably down the road. The other thing we can do, in addition to that daily volatility scoring, is we create a one-page financial snapshot of clients. It's called our map, so that they can see everything in one single piece of paper. And we can share this online. Same thing, they can access it. And so they can see every asset they own, every liability they have, every cash flow, future, either their income today or future cash flow stream, Social Security, whatever you name it. And I think I mentioned this in the first episode, we could do a 100-page financial plan for somebody, but you know what? That gets outdated pretty fast. But if we have a one-page document that they can carry out of here when they leave, or that they can print off on their computer after that virtual meeting, man, that's a current snapshot. That's cool. That's winning. That's winning today like we're trying to win.
I think that everything on that snapshot is what's important now. I mean, even though a lot of that stuff, like you said, is in the future income or whatever, whether it's Social Security, things like that. But that snapshot tells you how you're doing right now. I love that. That's fantastic.
Because quite honestly, if somebody's trying to get from point A to point B, let's call it retirement, they're starting today as point A, right? Point B is in the future somewhere. There's a process to get from there. And do you mind if I go off the rails totally with a story?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm laughing to myself even before I tell the story. But my daughter, a week ago, jumps on a plane, and there in the second row is Mike Tyson.
What? Seriously?
Iron Mike, former boxing champ of the world, meanest man on the planet for a while, maybe still is, I don't know, is sitting there. And so this is a guy, even with a mask covering part of his face, that is quite recognizable to most people on this planet. Yeah. And so she texts me almost instantly, and I'm laughing, thinking, boy, that's a pretty cool experience, cool story. And then, of course, 2 seconds later, my financial planner hat magically appears on my head, and I'm like, how can I use this story to explain something to better the human civilization?
I'm waiting for it. Bring it on.
Here we go. And so there I sit thinking, why are there only a limited number of first-class seats on an aircraft? And the answer is because 3/4 of the people on that plane don't want to pay extra to get from destination, or I should say starting point A to destination B. They know everybody's going to get there at the same time on the plane. They don't see the value of that feature. And so it's the total opposite, essentially, of retirement planning, let's say. If somebody's starting today to get to that retirement destination someday, point B, you can't just do nothing and not be accountable and just enjoy the ride of sorts and show up with a successful outcome. You need that pilot up front, or you need that coach or that financial advisor in your corner to essentially kick you in the tail once in a while, have a plan together, and keep you accountable in order to get the true value-oriented success you deserve.
Well, I'm glad that's a fantastic transition, because my next question was about your client's responsibility. And the reason I say that is because you spoke a lot about the things, the services, the tools, the resources that you provide. But I know that the relationship is paramount. And for a relationship, there has to be communication. What are you expecting from your client? Number one, I think I'm gonna ask you about reviews, how often they happen, so on and so forth. So keep that in your mind. But really, I'm curious about what kind of life events, what kind of events do you want your clients reaching out about? An obvious one would be, hey, I hit the Powerball, now I have $500 million.
I would take that phone call instantly.
Right. No, that is a phone call.
That's not very nice.
But it's true. Everybody would take that phone call instantly. But things like that. So, what kind of life events are you asking your clients? Hey, keep me updated. Let me know. So that you can, because it's going to play a part of their future plan. And then, like I said, I'd love to talk a little bit about your review meetings and things, how that works.
Absolutely expect accountability and some effort from clients, quite honestly. We want to take a lot off their plate, but we do feel it's important to at least once a year have an in-person meeting. And by in-person, I mean face-to-face or virtually face-to-face, whatever you want to say. Not only to look at what's happened, but to talk about the future. And And life events are going to happen, and those are definitely a key thing we remind clients of. If somebody is changing careers, getting within 5 years of retirement, where I'm going to get into that later, that was in my book. That's what we call the really important 10-year window before and after retirement. That's a side note. If there's a birth of a child, loss of a loved one, any kind of generational planning, we want to meet their kids, we want to meet grandkids. But if there's a life change that was unexpected, or you have something major expected, whether that's a purchase or something disastrously bad, I hate to say, we want them to bring that to our attention because we want to be in the loop. Anything we can try and navigate or soften ahead of time is really, really important. And we could meet with clients monthly or quarterly, but you know what? I think we'd run out of things to talk about. Life events, we want those brought to our attention any possible time that they happen. Or if a client has a question, we want to hear from them absolutely anytime, and we'll respond. But it is good at least once a year to sit down, dig into those things. We also spend a lot of time talking about cash flow analysis to try and assist them with not necessarily budgeting, but cash flow planning for the future. Because at some point in retirement or in life, it's not about how big your pile of money is. It's about proper cash flow to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And that's something we can discuss year after year after year until it really, really hits home and it becomes important. Part of those annual review meetings also will be myself or my team discussing our interpretation of current research we're digging in, current economics, current headlines, due diligence of behind the scenes things we're working on. We want to educate people, but we don't want to overwhelm them with information.
Corey, on the last podcast, you really spoke about what documents, what things you want people to bring into you so that you can help them disseminate it and look to see if it'll be a good fit to work together, so on and so forth. In the review process, what kind of documentation are you reviewing?
Since we're already managing a lot of the assets in-house or in my office, we have a lot of that documentation. Things on the side, though, would be possible life insurance, long-term care insurance policies, if they have their Social Security statement from the year that projects the future of that, or if they have a pension plan, corporate benefits review, anything that's not essentially held or managed directly inside of my office or my firm, we like to see those documents and talk about those.
And I'm assuming that happens with life events as well. If somebody's updated you and maybe they're expecting a grandchild, that's definitely a trigger for you to review. Maybe make sure that the life insurance is where they want it to be. Maybe a will review is due at that point. I don't know if that's something you do or if you suggest that to them and they have an outside resource. How about that?
We tackle all those things. We joke that we know enough to be dangerous on essentially almost any topic, but we can educate people, we can review those things, and if we need to refer a client to a CPA or an attorney to update some of those things or get deeper answers, we will absolutely do that. There are a lot of life events that clients don't even realize can tie into a financial situation. For example, like you said, the birth of a grandchild, a lot of grandparents don't realize they can open a college account or a gift to minor type account to benefit that young one with something down the road. So, we like to talk about new things because we might have solutions or ideas for new things.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, you've seen it, you've done it. This is something you do on a daily basis, and that may be their first grandchild. That may be their first situation like that. Again, we only retire once. You've helped countless people retire. So I think that's a great way to put it. All right, we're really getting low on time, Corey, but I know what you're going to be talking about on the next podcast. And I want to give the audience a little preview. Corey has a fantastic book, and it's Stop Doing Dumb Things with Your Money, which I just freaking love the title. But one of the chapters in there is Don't Set Insane Goals. And I know goal setting is part of that onboarding process that you do. You help people to dream big and look at their future, but setting realistic goals as a coach, that's something that I help people do a lot of times. It's very difficult to help people to understand what a realistic goal is as far as, okay, that's way too big. You want to be a billionaire in 7 years. Great, but you're not working. That's probably not realistic. So I love chapter 3, Don't Set Insane Goals. I know you're going to talk a lot more about the book, but I wanted to ask you about that chapter specifically. Why do you think that's so important?
My staff affectionately calls me the voice of reason. And I don't know if that means I'm old and stodgy and boring, but everybody encourages individuals to set super high goals, or, motivational speakers do this all the time. Set really high goals and maybe you'll land somewhere below there, but you'll have made progress. Well, let's set goals we can achieve. Let's keep them realistic. And then when the markets or things get a little bumpy, I'll be the voice of reason then to explain to you why things are okay. And we can set lofty goals, but damn it, let's reach those. Let's not make them unrealistic where there's no way in heck we're going to get to them. And so if you'd have told me 20 years ago I'd have been an author someday, I'd have told you were nuts. So that's a whole nother topic. But I wanted the book to be entertaining, but I also wanted it to have enough nuggets that it made a lot of sense to people.
Well, I know that's the theme of our next podcast. You're going to be going through this book. We're going to talk about it. I've got lots of questions. But the nice thing is that you give this book away for free to anybody who will just reach out and ask for it. And so if you want to get a hold of Corey's book before that next podcast so you can follow along and kind of look at what he's talking about, I know that he'll be happy to do that. How do they get a hold of the book, Corey?
Give us a call, 800-657-4316. And any member of my staff or my team will be happy to mail this out to you, and we'll pay the postage. There's no obligations, no costs, so take advantage of it.
Corey, thank you so much for your time today. I always appreciate it.
Right on, my friend.
All right. And our last thank you goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Win Podcast with Corey Heimensen. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Corey comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it really easy to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks so much for listening today. For everyone at Heimensen Wealth Advisors, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Win Podcast. What's important now? The show that helps you achieve your financial dreams. To ask questions about topics covered during the show or get a copy of Stop Doing Dumb Things with Your Money by Corey Heimensen, visit www.heimensenwealth.com or give us a call at 712-472-3867. Don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes become available. Securities offered through Securities America Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Securities America Advisors Inc. Heimensen Wealth Advisors and Securities America are separate entities.